Time fractured into a series of moments so brief they barely registered. Daniel's arm around her waist, pulling her behind a boulder. The crack of gunfire so close she felt the percussion in her chest. The woman from the meeting screaming, scrambling for cover. The metallic taste of fear on her tongue. Sarah hit the ground hard, rocks digging into her palms. Daniel was on top of her, shielding her with his body, and for one surreal moment she was transported back to their first date when it had started raining and he'd covered her with his jacket, laughing as they ran for shelter. This wasn't rain. This was death, and it had found them. "Stay down," Daniel hissed in her ear. His voice was completely different from the one that had said her name on the phone yesterday. This was the voice of a soldier, cold and controlled. "Do not move unless I tell you to move." More gunfire. Shouting. The woman, who Sarah now realized must be the whistleblower, was huddled behind a tree 20 feet away, her hands over her head, sobbing. Daniel lifted his head slightly, assessing. 3 men, maybe 4, advancing from the trail. They had tactical gear, professional weapons. This wasn't some amateur operation. These were Vance's people, and they'd come prepared. "Jennifer," Daniel called to the woman. "Jennifer, listen to me. On 3 you're going to run to your left, down toward the creek. Don't look back. Don't stop. Just run." The woman looked at him with eyes wild with panic. I can't, they'll kill me. They'll kill you if you stay here." 1, 2. Daniel fired 3 shots toward the advancing men, forcing them to take cover. 3. Go. Jennifer ran. Sarah watched her disappear into the trees, praying she'd make it, knowing the odds weren't good. "Sarah." Daniel's hand gripped her shoulder. "Look at me." She turned her head, met his eyes. In them she saw fear but also determination. The same look he'd had the day he'd proposed, when he'd been terrified she'd say no but asked anyway. "I need you to trust me. One more time. Can you do that?" Sarah nodded, unable to speak. "There's a drainage pipe about 50 yards behind us. I saw it on the map when I was planning this. It leads down to the service road. I'm going to cover you while you run for it. When you get there, you follow that pipe all the way down and you don't stop. You get to the truck and you drive away." "No." The word came out fierce, automatic. "I'm not leaving you. Sarah, this isn't a discussion. These men are here to kill me and anyone with me. Your only chance is to run." Then we both run. She grabbed his arm, fury breaking through her fear. "You don't get to make this choice for me. Not again. Not ever again." Daniel's expression shifted, and for a moment she saw something raw and broken beneath the soldier's mask. "Sarah, please. I can't lose you. Not for real. Not like this. Then stop trying to send me away." She squeezed his arm. "We go together or not at all." A bullet struck the boulder they were hiding behind, spraying rock fragments. The men were getting closer, more aggressive. They were running out of time. Daniel looked at her for one more second, and she saw the moment he made his decision. "All right. Together. But you do exactly what I say when I say it. Promise me." "I promise." He checked his weapon, his movements economical and practiced. "The pipe is at 2 o'clock from here, behind that fallen log. When I start firing, you run. Don't zigzag, just run as fast as you can. I'll be right behind you." Sarah's heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst. She'd never been athletic, had never been in a situation where her physical capability might mean the difference between life and death. But she thought of the hours she'd spent at the gym after Daniel's funeral, running on the treadmill until her legs screamed and her lungs burned, trying to outrun the grief. Maybe those hours would save her life now. "Ready?" Daniel asked. "Ready. Go." Sarah ran. Behind her, Daniel's gun roared, a steady rhythm of covering fire. She focused on the fallen log, on moving her legs, on breathing. Don't think about the bullets. Don't think about Daniel behind you. Just run. Welcome back to our channel. Your participation has made our journey here very interesting. Before we continue with the story, please support our channel by subscribing, clicking the like button, and turning on notifications. Please leave a comment and suggest other video topics you would like us to work on. Thank you for your support. Now let's get back to the story. She vaulted the log with more grace than she'd known she possessed and saw it. The drainage pipe, 3 feet in diameter, half hidden by vegetation. Sarah dove for it, crawling inside, the metal cold and damp against her hands. A second later, Daniel crashed in behind her. "Go, go, go." The pipe angled downward, steep enough that Sarah half crawled, half slid through the darkness. Behind them, she heard voices shouting, the sound of someone trying to follow. Then Daniel stopped, turned, and fired 3 shots back up the pipe. The confined space made the sound deafening. "Keep moving," he said, his voice strained. Sarah's hands slipped on something wet. She didn't let herself think about what it might be. She just kept moving, kept crawling through the dark, trusting that Daniel was behind her, that this nightmare would end. Light appeared ahead. The end of the pipe. Sarah emerged into afternoon sunlight, stumbling onto a service road. Daniel was there a second later, grabbing her hand, pulling her toward the truck that was parked 50 yards away. They ran. Sarah's lungs burned, her legs felt like they might give out, but she kept running. Behind them, more shouting. A gunshot that kicked up dirt 5 feet to their left. They reached the truck and Daniel shoved her into the passenger seat, slamming the door. He was in the driver's seat a second later, engine roaring to life, tires spraying gravel as he gunned it down the service road. Sarah looked back. 2 men had emerged from the trees, weapons raised. One fired and the rear windshield exploded. Sarah screamed and ducked as glass rained down on them. Daniel took a corner at a speed that made the truck fishtail, but he controlled it, his hands steady on the wheel. "You okay?" he asked, not taking his eyes off the road. "Define okay," Sarah managed. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. "Are you hit? Are you hurt?" "No. Just scared." "Good. That's good." He took another turn, merging onto a larger road. "We need to ditch this truck. They got the plates. They'll have every cop in 3 states looking for us within the hour." Sarah looked at him. Really looked at him. There was blood on his face, a cut above his eyebrow. His hands were scraped raw. But his expression was focused, calculating. This was what 2 years of living on the run had made him. A man who could be shot at and still think 3 steps ahead. "What about Jennifer?" Sarah asked. "The woman at the overlook." Daniel's jaw tightened. "If she made it to the creek, there's a trail that leads to a parking area on the other side of the park. I gave her instructions before the meeting in case something went wrong. She has my contact information. If she survived, she'll reach out. And if she didn't survive? Then she's another person who died because of me." The self-loathing in his voice was visceral. "Another person I couldn't protect." Sarah reached over and put her hand on his arm. "This isn't your fault. You didn't pull those triggers. I set up the meeting. I brought her into this. I brought you into this." He glanced at her, and the guilt in his eyes was devastating. "Sarah, if something had happened to you back there, if you'd been hit, I would have. But I wasn't. I'm here. We're both here." She squeezed his arm. "And I made the choice to come to that meeting. You told me to stay in the car. I'm the one who ran up that trail. To warn me. You could have driven away and saved yourself. I told you. We're in this together now." Sarah looked out at the road ahead. "So where are we going?" Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then, "I have one more safe house. It's further out, more remote. But Sarah, if we go there, if we keep running, this never ends. They'll keep coming. They'll keep hunting us until either we're dead or they are. What's the alternative? We go on the offensive. We stop running and we finish this." Sarah thought about the files she'd read at the storage unit. The evidence Daniel had compiled. The corruption that reached into the highest levels of government. "How?" "I have copies of everything. Every document, every transaction record, every piece of evidence linking Vance to the weapons trafficking. I was going to wait until after Jennifer gave her testimony, until I had an airtight case. But they know I'm alive now. They know I'm moving against them. If we wait, they'll destroy evidence and disappear. So we don't wait," Sarah said. "We release everything. No. Today." Daniel looked at her, surprised. "It's risky. If the wrong people get to the information first, they could bury it. Make us look like conspiracy theorists. Then we make sure it goes to the right people. Multiple sources. Journalists, FBI, members of Congress who aren't in Vance's pocket. We flood the zone so they can't contain it." Sarah heard herself talking and barely recognized the woman speaking. When had she become someone who strategized about exposing military corruption? When had she become someone who could be shot at and still think clearly? Maybe around the same time her husband faked his death and turned her into a widow. "There's a reporter," Daniel said slowly. "Someone who's been investigating defense contractor corruption for years. Lisa Chen with the Washington Post. I've been in contact with her anonymously, feeding her small pieces of information. If we gave her everything, if we went on record, she'd run with it. Then that's what we do." Daniel pulled into a rest area and parked behind a gas station, out of sight of the main road. He turned to face her fully. "Sarah, you need to understand what this means. Once we do this, once we go public, there's no taking it back. Your life as you knew it is over. The quiet widow who works at a non-profit and has dinner with her sister on Tuesdays, she's gone. You'll be Sarah Mitchell, the woman whose husband faked his death to expose a conspiracy. You'll be in the news. You'll be questioned, investigated, maybe even attacked by people who want to discredit us. That life was already over the moment I opened your letter, Sarah said. I just didn't know it yet. Are you sure? No. She met his eyes. I'm terrified. I'm furious with you. I don't know if we can ever be what we were. But I'm sure that I want to see this through. I'm sure that I want those people held accountable for what they did to you, to Jennifer, to Moss. I'm sure that I'm done being a victim. Something in Daniel's expression shifted. Pride maybe. Or recognition. Okay, then we do this. But first, we need to get somewhere safe where we can upload all the files and coordinate with Chen. And we need to ditch this truck. He pulled out his phone, the burner from the storage unit, and made a call. Marcus, it's me. I need a favor and I need it fast. Sarah couldn't hear Marcus's response, but Daniel's side of the conversation was terse and efficient. He gave their location, described what they needed, and hung up. He'll be here in 40 minutes with a clean car. In the meantime, we wait. Daniel reached into the back seat and pulled out a first aid kit. Let me see your hands. Sarah looked down. Her palms were scraped raw from crawling through the pipe, dirt and blood mixing in the creases. She hadn't even felt it until now, but looking at the damage made it start to sting. Daniel took her hands gently, cleaning the wounds with antiseptic. His touch was so familiar it made her chest ache. How many times had he done this before? Tended to a cut or a burn, his hands careful and competent. I'm sorry, he said quietly, not looking up from her hands. For all of it. But especially for today. I should have known they'd be watching Jennifer. Should have anticipated they'd set a trap. You're not omniscient, Daniel. You can't predict everything. I should have protected you better. Stop. Sarah pulled her hands back. Stop apologizing. Stop trying to protect me. I'm a grown woman who made her own choices. You told me to stay in the car. I ran up that trail anyway. You told me to run down the pipe alone. I refused. These were my decisions. Decisions you never should have had to make. Maybe not. But I did make them and I'd make them again. She reached out and touched his face, the first time she'd initiated contact since seeing him on the dock. You don't have to carry this alone anymore. That's what you've been doing for 2 years, isn't it? Carrying all of this, the investigation, the guilt, the fear, completely alone because you thought it would keep me safe. Daniel closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. I missed you, he whispered. Every day. Every hour. I'd see something and think, I need to tell Sarah about this, and then remember I couldn't. That you thought I was dead. That I'd made you think I was dead. I missed you too. Even though I was angry, even though I felt betrayed, I missed you. They sat in the truck, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. Sarah felt tears sliding down her cheeks, but she didn't try to stop them. These weren't tears of grief or rage. They were tears of release, of finally letting go of the careful control she'd maintained for 2 years. I don't know how to forgive you, she said. I don't know if I can. I don't expect you to. I just want you to survive this. To have a chance at a life, even if it's not with me. What if I wanted to be with you? The question came out before she could stop it, raw and honest. What if I'm still in love with you despite everything? What if I hate you and love you at the same time and don't know how to reconcile those things? Daniel opened his eyes, and the hope in them was almost painful to see. Then we figure it out. Together. After this is over, we figure out what we are to each other now. Together, Sarah echoed. It felt like a promise. A car pulled into the rest area, an older sedan that had seen better days. Marcus got out, looking around cautiously before approaching the truck. When he saw them, relief washed over his face. Jesus Christ, you two look like hell, he said as they got out. Then he pulled Sarah into a hug so tight it hurt. I'm so glad you're okay. We're not out of this yet, Daniel said. The meeting was compromised. They were waiting for us. Marcus's expression darkened. Jennifer. Unknown. She ran when the shooting started. I haven't heard from her. Damn it. Marcus looked at the truck, at the shattered rear windshield. This is escalating fast. Which is why we're moving up the timeline. We're going to release everything. Today. Daniel handed Marcus the truck keys. Can you make this disappear? I'll take care of it. Where are you two going? Better if you don't know. If they come asking questions, you can honestly say you have no idea where we are. Marcus nodded. Then he looked at Sarah, his expression serious. I'm sorry. For lying to you. For all of it. I know that doesn't change anything, but I need you to know that I hated every second of it. I know, Sarah said. And she did. She could see it in the way his shoulders carried tension, in the shadows under his eyes. Marcus had been carrying his own burden all this time. "Be safe," Marcus said. "Both of you. And when this is over, you're buying me the biggest steak dinner I've ever seen." "Deal," Daniel said. They got into the sedan Marcus had brought, and Daniel drove them out of the rest area, heading north. Sarah watched Marcus disappear in the side mirror, and with him, the last connection to her old life. They drove for 2 hours, taking back roads and small highways, constantly checking for tails. Sarah's nerves were stretched so thin she jumped at every car that came up behind them, every siren in the distance. Finally, Daniel pulled into a small motel on the outskirts of a town Sarah had never heard of. The kind of place that took cash and didn't ask questions. "Wait here," he said, and went into the office. He came back 5 minutes later with a key. "Room 12. It's in the back, away from the road." The room was exactly what Sarah expected. Worn carpet, faded wallpaper, a bed that sagged in the middle. But it had a lock on the door and curtains on the windows, and right now that was all that mattered. Daniel set up his laptop on the small desk and began pulling files from a secure cloud storage. Sarah watched him work, his fingers flying over the keyboard, his face illuminated by the screen's glow. "How much evidence do you have?" she asked. "Enough to put Vance and at least a dozen others away for the rest of their lives. Transaction records, communications, testimony from soldiers who witnessed the thefts, photographs of meetings with arms dealers, and the shipping manifests for the upcoming sale." He pulled up a spreadsheet. 50 crates of weapons scheduled to move in 2 days. Enough firepower to start a war. Sarah felt sick looking at the numbers. How did they get away with this for so long? Compartmentalization. No one person saw the whole picture except Vance. And anyone who got close to figuring it out ended up dead or discredited. Daniel's voice was bitter. "It's a perfect system. Until someone like me comes along who's too stubborn to die when he's supposed to. Or too in love to stay dead," Sarah said softly. Daniel looked at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "Yeah, that too." His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Daniel answered on speaker. "Mitchell. It's Jennifer." The woman's voice was shaky but alive. "I made it out. I'm safe." Relief flooded through Sarah so powerfully she had to sit down. "Thank God," Daniel said. "Are you hurt?" "Cuts and bruises, nothing serious. I'm at a police station in the next county over. They want to know what happened." "What do I tell them?" "Tell them everything. Give them a full statement about what you witnessed at the Pentagon, about the weapons trafficking, about the attack today. Get it on record. And then I need you to call this number." Daniel recited Lisa Chen's direct line from memory. "She's a reporter with the Washington Post. She's been investigating this for months. Tell her you're ready to go on record and that you're working with me. You're really doing this? Going public. We're out of options. They know I'm alive. They know you're talking. Our only chance is to get this out in the open before they can silence us." Jennifer was quiet for a moment. Then, "Okay, I'll do it. But Daniel, they'll come after all of us. You know that, right? Once this breaks, we'll all be targets." "I know. But we'll also have the protection of public scrutiny. It's harder to make people disappear when the whole world is watching." "I hope you're right. Good luck." The call ended. Daniel immediately dialed another number. Lisa Chin, a woman's voice answered, sharp and professional. "Miss Chin, this is your anonymous source on the Pentagon corruption story. I'm ready to come forward, and I have everything you need to break this wide open." "Who is this?" The excitement in her voice was barely contained. "My name is Daniel Mitchell. I'm a former Marine intelligence analyst who was killed in action 2 years ago. Except I wasn't killed. I was the target of an assassination attempt because I uncovered a weapons trafficking operation run by Colonel Richard Vance and his network inside the Pentagon." Silence on the other end. Then, "Holy shit. I have documentation of everything. Transaction records, communications, testimony from witnesses. And I have the shipping manifests for a major weapons sale scheduled to happen in 2 days. Enough evidence to bring down Vance and everyone involved. Can you prove you are who you say you are? I'm sending you a photo of my military ID and my death certificate right now. You can verify both with the Department of Defense." Daniel sent the files. Sarah could hear typing on the other end. "Jesus," Chin breathed. "This is real. You're real. Very real. And very much in danger. These people have already tried to kill me twice. They attacked me and a whistleblower today at a state park in West Virginia. Multiple gunmen, professional operation. We barely got out. Are you willing to go on record?" Full interview, real names, everything? Yes. But it needs to happen fast. We're running out of time. Can you meet us tonight? Where are you? Daniel gave her the address of a diner 30 miles away. Neutral ground, public place. 9 o'clock. Come alone. I'll be there. And Mr. Mitchell? Thank you for being brave enough to do this. Thank my wife, Daniel said, looking at Sarah. She's the brave one. He hung up and immediately started copying files to a secure drive. I'm making 3 copies. One for Chin, one for the FBI, and one backup that we keep hidden. If anything happens to us, Marcus has instructions to release it to every major news outlet in the country. You really have thought of everything, Sarah said. I've had 2 years to plan for this moment. I wasn't going to waste it. Sarah looked at the clock. 5:30. They had 3.5 hours before the meeting with Chen. 3.5 hours to wait and hope that Vance's people didn't find them first. I need to call Rebecca, she said suddenly. She'll be worried. I haven't talked to her since yesterday. Use the burner. Your regular phone is probably compromised. Sarah called her sister from the burner phone. Rebecca answered on the first ring. Sarah? Where are you? I've been calling and texting all day. You're scaring me. I'm okay. I'm safe. But Becca, I need you to listen to me carefully. What I'm about to tell you is going to sound insane, but I need you to trust me. You're freaking me out. What's going on? Sarah took a deep breath. Daniel's alive. Silence. Then, what? Daniel didn't die 2 years ago. It was fake to protect him while he was investigating corruption in the Pentagon. He's been alive this whole time, and now the people he was investigating are trying to kill him. And me. We're going to expose everything tonight, and it's going to be in the news tomorrow, and I needed you to hear it from me first. More silence. Sarah could almost hear her sister's mind working, trying to process the impossible. Sarah, are you having some kind of breakdown? Do you need me to come get you? I'm not having a breakdown. I know how it sounds, but it's real. Daniel contacted me 2 days ago. I've seen him. I've talked to him. We were attacked today by people trying to stop us from exposing this. Rebecca, I need you to believe me. Put him on the phone. Sarah handed the phone to Daniel. He took it, his expression uncertain. Rebecca, it's me. It's Daniel. Sarah couldn't hear Rebecca's response, but she saw Daniel's face soften. I know. I'm so sorry. I never wanted to put Sarah through that, never wanted to hurt any of you. But it was the only way to keep her safe. He listened. No, I can't tell you where we are. It's not safe. But by tomorrow this will all be public. The truth will be out there. Another pause. I will. I promise I'll take care of her. I love her too much not to. He handed the phone back to Sarah. Sarah? Rebecca's voice was thick with tears. Is this really happening? It's really happening. I don't know whether to be happy for you or furious with him or just completely overwhelmed. Try being all 3 at once. That's where I'm at. Rebecca laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. Are you safe? Really, truly safe? For now. And after tonight we will be. Once this is public, once everyone knows the truth, we'll be protected by exposure. I'm going to need so much therapy after this. You and me both. Sarah smiled despite everything. I love you, Becca. I love you too. And Sarah? When this is over, we're having a very long conversation about all of this over several bottles of wine. Deal. Sarah ended the call and set the phone down. Daniel had finished copying the files and was now packing everything into a backpack. You hungry? He asked. There's a drive-through down the street. I could grab us something. The normalcy of the question made Sarah want to laugh. They were on the run from killers about to expose a massive conspiracy, and he was asking about dinner. Yeah. I'm starving actually. Burgers okay? Perfect. Daniel left and Sarah was alone in the motel room. She walked to the window and peered through the curtains at the parking lot. Evening was falling, shadows lengthening across the pavement. Somewhere out there, Vance and his people were looking for them, trying to silence them before they could talk. But they were going to fail. In a few hours, the truth would start coming out and there would be no stopping it. Sarah thought about the woman she'd been 3 days ago. The quiet widow who went to work and had dinner with her sister and tried not to think too hard about the future. That woman was gone, transformed by Daniel's letter into someone she barely recognized. Someone stronger. Someone braver. Someone who'd crawled through a drainage pipe while people shot at her and come out the other side still standing. Daniel returned with burgers and fries and they ate sitting on the bed, the TV on low for background noise. It was surreal and domestic and completely bizarre. What happens after tonight? Sarah asked. After we give Chin everything and this hits the news, what's our life going to look like? Daniel was quiet for a moment, chewing thoughtfully. Chaotic. There'll be investigations, probably criminal trials. We'll both have to testify. The media will be all over us. It'll be intense for a while. And after that? I don't know. I haven't let myself think that far ahead. For 2 years, my only goal was to bring down Vance and keep you safe. What comes after, I have no idea. We'll have to figure out who we are now. Who I am, who you are, who we are together. Sarah set down her burger, no longer hungry. I don't know if we can just pick up where we left off, Daniel. Too much has changed. I know. And I'm not asking you to. I'm just asking for a chance. A chance to prove that the man you married is still in here somewhere, underneath all the scars and mistakes. I think he is, Sarah said softly. I see him sometimes. In the way you bandaged my hands. In the way you called Rebecca to reassure her. In the way you look at me like I'm the most important thing in the world. You are the most important thing in the world. You always have been. Sarah reached over and took his hand. Then prove it. Not by protecting me or making decisions for me, but by being honest, by being present, by letting me in even when it's hard. I can do that, Daniel said. I want to do that. They sat there holding hands and Sarah felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not yet. But the possibility of it. The understanding that love wasn't just about the good times, the easy moments. It was also about the hard conversations, the painful truths, the choice to stay even when leaving would be simpler. At 8:30 they packed up and headed for the diner. The drive was tense, both of them scanning every car, every shadow. But they made it without incident. The diner was a classic American establishment, all chrome and red vinyl, filled with the smell of coffee and fried food. Lisa Chen was already there, sitting in a back booth with her laptop open. She was younger than Sarah had expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes and the intense focus of someone who lived for the story. Mr. Mitchell, she said as they approached. And you must be Mrs. Mitchell. Sarah, she said, sliding into the booth. I have to say, when I got your call, I thought it might be a hoax. Dead Marines don't usually come back to life. I'm a special case, Daniel said with a ghost of a smile. Chin pulled out a recorder. Do you mind? That's why we're here. For the next 3 hours, Daniel told her everything. The initial investigation, the evidence he'd gathered, the assassination attempt, Moss's plan to fake his death. The 2 years living under an assumed identity. The death of Moss. Jennifer's testimony. The attack today. Chen's questions were sharp and probing, but Daniel answered them all. Sarah watched him lay it all out, every painful detail, every choice that had led them to this moment. When it came time for Sarah's part of the story, she told Chin about the letter, about finding Daniel alive, about the surveillance photos and the fear that had driven her decisions. How did you feel when you found out he was alive? Chin asked. Sarah didn't hesitate. Furious, betrayed, and relieved beyond measure. All at the same time. And now? How do you feel about him now? Sarah looked at Daniel, at the man who'd let her mourn him, who'd lied to her, who'd loved her enough to sacrifice everything including her trust. I feel like I'm married to a stranger who has my husband's face. And I'm trying to figure out if I can fall in love with him all over again. Chin nodded, making notes. That's a hell of a quote. When they'd finished, Daniel handed over the drive with all the evidence. Chin plugged it into her laptop and spent 30 minutes reviewing the files, her expression growing more intense with each page. This is incredible, she said finally. This is going to bring down the entire network. Vance, his co-conspirators, probably some people we haven't even identified yet. The scale of this is staggering. When can you publish? Daniel asked. I need to verify some of the details, get confirmation from the Pentagon on your death certificate and service record. But if I work through the night, I can have a story ready by tomorrow afternoon. It'll go live on the website and we'll run a full feature in Sunday's paper. What about us? Are we going to be safe once this goes public? You'll be under intense scrutiny, which is actually a form of protection. Vance can't make you disappear when the whole world is watching. That said, I'd recommend contacting the FBI as soon as possible. Get protective custody if they'll offer it. And be prepared for the media circus. Sarah looked at Daniel. FBI. Tomorrow morning? Tomorrow morning, he agreed. They left the diner at midnight. Sarah felt lighter somehow, as if sharing the story had distributed the weight of it across more shoulders. Chin would carry it now and soon the whole world would know. Back at the motel, exhaustion hit Sarah like a freight train. She showered, washing off the dirt and fear of the day, and when she came out, Daniel had made up the couch with blankets and a pillow. "You take the bed," he said. "I'll be fine here." Sarah looked at him, at this man who'd been her husband for 5 years, who'd let her believe he was dead for 2 of them. She thought about all the nights she'd slept alone in their bed, reaching for him in the darkness and finding only empty space. "Stay," she said. "Not for anything except sleep. But stay. I don't want to be alone tonight." Daniel looked at her with such naked hope it made her chest ache. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." They got into bed, staying on their respective sides, a careful distance between them. But in the darkness, Sarah reached out and found Daniel's hand. He laced his fingers through hers and held on like she was the only thing keeping him anchored to the earth. "Thank you," he whispered, "for giving me a chance. For not hating me." "I do hate you sometimes," Sarah said honestly. "But I also love you. And I'm trying to figure out how to hold both of those truths at the same time. We'll figure it out. Together." "Together?" Sarah echoed. She fell asleep holding his hand, and for the first time in 2 years she didn't dream of funerals and flag-draped coffins. She dreamed of the future, uncertain and terrifying and full of possibility. Sarah woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains and the sound of Daniel on the phone. She lay still for a moment, orienting herself. The motel. The interview with Chin. Daniel alive and standing by the window talking in low tones. He turned and saw her awake. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone, then ended the call. "Morning." "Who was that?" "Diane Reeves. Marcus's FBI contact. She wants to meet with us this morning, get our full statements. She's also arranging protection in case Vance's people try anything before the story breaks." Sarah sat up, pushing hair out of her face. "When?" "Noon. At the field office in Baltimore. I told her we'd be there." "Baltimore. That's what, 2 hours from here." "About that. Which gives us time for breakfast and to not look like we spent the night running from killers." Sarah laughed despite everything. "I don't think there's enough time in the world for that." They found a small cafe and ate pancakes while reading the news on Daniel's phone. Nothing yet from Chin, but that made sense. The story wouldn't drop until afternoon. The drive to Baltimore was uneventful. Sarah kept expecting something to go wrong, for Vance's people to appear out of nowhere, but the road stayed clear. Maybe they'd given up. Or maybe they were regrouping, planning their next move. The FBI field office was an imposing building of glass and steel. Diane Reeves met them in the lobby, a woman in her 50s with gray-streaked hair and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd seen too much to be shocked by anything. "Mr. Mitchell. Mrs. Mitchell. Thank you for coming in." She shook their hands firmly. "Marcus has filled me in on the basics, but I need to hear the full story from you." She led them to a conference room and spent the next 4 hours taking their statements. Her questions were thorough and professional, covering every detail from Daniel's initial investigation to the attack yesterday. When they finished, Reeves sat back in her chair. "This is big. Bigger than anything I've worked on in 20 years with the Bureau. If even half of what you're telling me is true, we're looking at one of the largest corruption scandals in military history." "It's all true," Daniel said. "Every word. And I have the documentation to prove it. I believe you. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure Vance and his network are brought to justice." Reeves pulled out a business card. "In the meantime, I'm assigning you a protective detail. 2 agents will be with you at all times until we can determine the full extent of the threat." "Is that really necessary?" Sarah asked. "Once the story breaks, won't we be safe?" "Public exposure helps, but it's not a guarantee. Desperate people do desperate things. Until we have Vance and his associates in custody, I want you protected." Daniel nodded. "We appreciate that." Reeves stood. "I'll have agents ready within the hour. In the meantime, wait here. There's coffee and snacks in the break room. And try to relax. You've done the hard part." After she left, Sarah turned to Daniel. "Do you think it's over? Really over?" "Not yet. But soon. Once Chen's story hits, once the investigation is public, there's no putting this genie back in the bottle." He reached for her hand. "We're going to make it, Sarah. We're going to get through this." At 3 in the afternoon, Daniel's phone buzzed with an alert. He opened it and showed Sarah the screen. Lisa Chen's story had just gone live on the Washington Post website. The headline read, "Dead Marine returns to expose Pentagon corruption. Exclusive interview with Daniel Mitchell, the man who faked his death to bring down a weapons trafficking network." Sarah read the article, her heart pounding. Chin had done an incredible job. Every detail was there, laid out with clarity and supported by the documentation Daniel had provided. The evidence was irrefutable. Within an hour, the story had exploded. Cable news picked it up. Social media went wild. The Pentagon issued a statement promising a full investigation. Members of Congress called for hearings. And somewhere in all of that noise, Richard Vance's carefully constructed empire began to crumble. By evening, news broke that Vance had been taken into FBI custody. 3 other officers had been arrested as well, with more expected to follow. The weapons shipment had been intercepted before it could leave the country. Sarah watched the news coverage in a daze. It was really happening. The truth was out and there was no stopping it. "We did it," Daniel said softly, his arm around her shoulders. "It's over." Sarah leaned into him, letting herself feel the relief. "It's over," she echoed. But even as she said it, she knew that wasn't quite true. The conspiracy was over, the immediate danger had passed. But the hard work of rebuilding their lives, of figuring out who they were to each other now, that was just beginning. The next few weeks were a blur. Interviews, depositions, testimony before congressional committees. Sarah and Daniel were kept in protective custody in a safe house outside the city, FBI agents rotating shifts to keep them secure. Rebecca visited as often as she was allowed, bringing news from the outside world and enough wine to make the situation bearable. She and Daniel had a long, tense conversation about what he'd put Sarah through. Sarah didn't hear all of it, but she heard enough to know that Rebecca had torn into him with the protective fury only a sister could muster. Daniel took it without defending himself, acknowledging every point, accepting every accusation. When Rebecca was done, he'd simply said, "You're right. About all of it. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make it right." That had seemed to satisfy Rebecca, or at least defuse her anger enough that she could hug him and tell him she was glad he was alive. Marcus visited too, bringing Sarah's laptop and clothes from her house. He looked lighter somehow, the burden of secrecy finally lifted. "I owe you that steak dinner," Daniel told him. "Damn right you do. The biggest one you can buy." Marcus grinned. "But I'll settle for you two being happy. That's payment enough." Jennifer came to visit once, looking healthier than she had at the Overlook but still carrying the shadows of what they'd been through. She and Daniel talked for hours about the investigation, about Moss, about what came next. "She'd be proud of you," Jennifer told him. "General Moss. She'd be proud of what you did." Daniel's eyes had filled with tears at that. "I hope so. I hope it was worth it." "It was," Jennifer said firmly. "Look at what we accomplished. Look at how many people are going to face justice because of what you started." The trials took months. Sarah sat through much of Vance's, watching as prosecutor after prosecutor laid out the evidence Daniel had gathered. The man who'd tried to kill her husband, who'd orchestrated his fake death, who'd corrupted the very system he was supposed to serve, sat stone-faced through it all. When the verdict came back guilty on all counts, Sarah felt something release in her chest. Justice. Imperfect, incomplete, but justice nonetheless. Vance was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. His co-conspirators received similar sentences. The weapons trafficking network was dismantled. And Daniel Mitchell, the Marine who died and come back to life, became a symbol of integrity and courage. Not that Daniel saw himself that way. He was uncomfortable with the attention, with being called a hero. He'd only done what was right, he insisted. What anyone would have done. But Sarah knew better. Not everyone would have had the courage to go up against a conspiracy that powerful. Not everyone would have sacrificed what he'd sacrificed. 6 months after Chen's story broke, the FBI lifted the protective detail. The threat had passed. Vance and his network were behind bars, and the people who'd been hunting Daniel were either arrested or had disappeared into the shadows, their power broken. Sarah and Daniel were finally free to go home. Except home felt different now. The brownstone in Georgetown was the same building, but walking through the door felt like entering a museum of their old life. Everything was exactly as Sarah had left it, frozen in time, waiting for people who no longer existed. "We could sell it," Daniel suggested, standing in the foyer where Sarah had first opened his letter. Start fresh somewhere new. Sarah thought about it. Part of her wanted exactly that. A clean break, a new beginning. But another part of her loved this house, loved the memories embedded in its walls. "No," she said finally. "We keep it. But we make new memories here. We don't try to recreate what we had. We build something different." Daniel nodded slowly. "Something different. I can do that." They started therapy both individually and together. Sarah needed help processing the trauma of the past 2 years, the grief that had been complicated by Daniel's resurrection. Daniel needed help dealing with the guilt, with the choices he'd made and their consequences. Together they worked on rebuilding trust. It wasn't easy. There were days when Sarah would look at Daniel and feel such rage at what he'd put her through that she couldn't speak. Days when he'd wake from nightmares of the explosion, convinced he was back in Kandahar. But there were good days too. Days when they'd cook dinner together and laugh at old jokes. Days when they'd take walks through the city and talk about nothing and everything. Days when Sarah would catch Daniel looking at her with such naked love that it took her breath away. Slowly, painfully, they found their way back to each other. Not to who they'd been before, that couple was gone forever. But to something new. Something forged in fire and tested by the worst either of them could imagine. A year after the trials ended, Daniel proposed to her again. Not with a new ring, but with the same one he'd given her on that beach in North Carolina all those years ago. "I know we're already married," he said, down on one knee in their kitchen. "But I want to do this right. I want to marry you again with full knowledge of who we are now. I want to make new vows that I can actually keep." Sarah looked at him, at this man who'd broken her heart and put it back together, who'd lied to her and loved her and nearly gotten them both killed. This man who was flawed and human and trying so hard to make things right. "Yes," she said. "Let's get married again." They had the ceremony on a beach, small and intimate. Just Rebecca and Marcus and a handful of close friends. No big wedding, no crowd. Just two people who'd been through hell and chosen to stay together anyway. When it came time for vows, Daniel spoke first. "Sarah, I made you promises before that I couldn't keep. I promised to never leave you and then I let you believe I was dead. I promised to always be honest and then I built my life on lies. Those broken promises are going to haunt me for the rest of my life." He took her hands, his voice steady despite the tears in his eyes. "So today I'm making new promises. I promise to be honest with you even when it's hard. I promise to trust you to make your own choices, even when I'm scared. I promise to work every day to deserve the second chance you've given me. And I promise to love you for the rest of my life, not in spite of everything we've been through, but because of it. Because you're the strongest, bravest, most amazing person I've ever known, and I'm the luckiest man alive to call you mine." Sarah wiped away tears before speaking. "Daniel, when I thought you were dead, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd never be whole again. And in a way I was right. The person I was before, the woman who married you the first time, she died along with you. But someone new grew from those ashes. Someone stronger. Someone who learned that she could survive anything." She squeezed his hands. "I'm not going to lie and say I've forgiven everything. Some hurts run too deep for that. But I've learned that love isn't just about the easy moments. It's about choosing to stay through the hard ones. It's about building something new from the broken pieces. So today I choose you. Not the man you were. Not the man I thought you were. But the man you are right now, flaws and all. I promise to be honest about when I'm struggling. I promise to keep working on us even when it's hard. And I promise to love you not blindly, but with eyes wide open to exactly who you are. Because that's the only kind of love that lasts." They kissed as the sun set over the ocean, and Sarah felt something click into place. Not healing, not yet. But hope. The possibility of a future that wasn't defined by what they'd lost but by what they'd found in each other. That night, lying in bed in a hotel overlooking the water, Sarah turned to Daniel. "Do you remember when you promised to take me to Santorini for our 10th anniversary?" Daniel's arms tightened around her. "I remember. I'm sorry we never made it. We still could. We missed our 10th anniversary, but there's no law that says we can't celebrate our 12th. Or our 15th. Or any anniversary we want." Daniel pulled back to look at her. "You want to go to Greece? I want to watch the sunset from Oia and drink wine that tastes like honey and sunshine. I want to make new memories that aren't tainted by everything that happened. I want to start living again, really living, not just surviving." A smile spread across Daniel's face, the first truly unburdened smile she'd seen from him in 2 years. "Then that's what we'll do. We'll go to Greece. We'll watch the sunset. We'll make new memories." "Together," Sarah said. "Together," Daniel echoed. And for the first time since she'd opened that cream-colored envelope what felt like a lifetime ago, Sarah let herself believe in the future. Not the future she'd planned, not the safe, predictable life she'd thought she wanted. But something better. Something earned through pain and struggle and the choice to keep trying even when it would have been easier to walk away. 3 months later, they stood on a terrace in Oia, watching the sun sink into the Aegean Sea. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink and purple, and the air smelled of salt and flowers and possibility. Daniel handed Sarah a glass of wine, and they toasted to new beginnings. "Does it taste like honey and sunshine?" he asked. Sarah took a sip and smiled. "It tastes like hope." They watched the sunset in comfortable silence, Daniel's arm around her waist, Sarah's head on his shoulder. And when the last rays of light disappeared below the horizon, when the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, Sarah turned to her husband, the man who died and come back to life, the man she'd chosen to love all over again. "I love you," she said. Simple words, but they carried the weight of everything they'd been through, everything they'd survived, everything they'd become. "I love you too," Daniel said. "Forever. For real this time." "Forever," Sarah agreed. And as they kissed beneath the stars, surrounded by the beauty of a place they'd dreamed of for so long, Sarah felt the last pieces of her broken heart click back together. Not the same as before. Scarred, imperfect, changed by everything that had happened. But whole. Finally, blessedly whole. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. They'd still have hard days, still struggle with trust and guilt and the lingering effects of trauma. But they'd face it together, two people who'd learned that love wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, doing the work, and choosing each other every single day. Sarah had mourned her husband for 2 years. But now, standing in the place they'd always dreamed of visiting, she wasn't mourning anymore. She was living. She was loving. She was building a future from the ashes of the past. And that future, uncertain and imperfect as it was, looked beautiful. The end.